All right. Ludwig Zamenhof, the creator of Esperanto. Chat, do you know what Esperanto is? Have you ever heard of Esperanto? Well, Ludwig died this day in 1917. It was actually yesterday, as of streaming. Here's a brief summary of Esperanto, the language intimately tied to the common destiny of the working class. If you've never heard of Esperanto, let's learn about Esperanto. You know what Esperanto is. Madi, I love it. Let's go back to Latin. Yeah. Crime pays, but botany doesn't. I love that guy. I think you need to talk with Abby Martin. I think he's got a talk show too. I think he does an interview thing. I love him. Yeah. There's an Esperanto version of Hamlet with William Shatner? I cannot believe it. Get out of here. Well, I'm reading from Jacobin today. Reading Communism in Words by Gregor Benton, talking about a brief history of Esperanto. The language intimately tied to the common destiny, not manifest destiny, not that one. The common destiny of the working class. Yeah. All right, I like that. I don't like that. Get out of my way. Look at that. A lot of more room for activities. Here we go. It's a vintage Esperanto postcard. That's cool. I like design. That's good design, actually. Very good design. Okay. Let's read. My dad's love of foreign languages began when he gave up bus conducting, and crossed the channel to fight Franco and become a communist. In Catalonia, a fighter told him that if the international brigadiers had known Esperanto, they might have had more success. When someone at a party school called Esperanto petit bourgeois, then the line, he was shocked and disappointed. He told me later, he's wrong. It's a good idea. It's communism in words. One day, everyone will speak it. Okay, this is all very interesting to me. I don't know much about Esperanto. I just know I just understand it. It's like a universal language. Like that was the idea. That I think they invented it. It didn't really take. I really don't know much what's going on here, so maybe we can learn along the way together. Let's learn together. Its inventor designed it to be simple, and I learned it in just 3 months. What? I'm going to learn a language in 3 months. In 2011, the Catalan Esperanto Association invited me to give a eulogy commemorating the International Brigadiers at their memorial in Montjuic Cemetery. They wanted it in the form of a tribute to my father, so I gave it in Esperanto. In the early 20th century, revolutionaries embraced this language, seeing it as a tool to build international solidarity. Esperanto faded, along with many of those hopes, as it faced decades of attacks from fascist and communist states alike, but its legacy is worth preserving. Okay, here we go. I don't know much about this. The Hoping One. Lyser Ludwig Zamenhof created Esperanto to be a global second language. As a Lithuanian Jew, Zamenhof grew up under Russian occupation and amid the tensions between Jews, Catholic Poles, Orthodox Russians, and Protestant Germans. He identified miscommunication as the main cause of this trouble. I wonder. It's interesting. Feels like it lacks theory. You know? I don't know. Zamenhof tried to create... It's not the main cause of trouble? Of tensions? It's class war, baby. Anyways. Lithuanian guy wondering why no one speaks his language. Yeah. Okay. First, Zamenhof tried to create standardized Yiddish to unify Jews across the Russian Empire. In the end, he abandoned it in favor of a universal language whose name means the Hoping One. Did you learn something right now? I just learned a thing. Underlying this project was Zamenhof's Interna Ideo, The belief that language did not represent an end in itself, but a step toward world peace and understanding. In that sense, it's pretty cool. I like that. It was very much a romantic fix, no pun intended, to overcome those bigger issues. How do you mean, Marty? Like romantic languages? I'm not sure I understand. A romantic fix. To fix romantic languages? Oh, very literal. Anyways. Yes, romantic language. Thank you for spelling that out for me. Sorry to have you ruin your joke. It was pretty funny. He published his Fundamento de Esperanto. I don't know why I'm saying it with an accent. In 1905, striving to maximize simplicity, efficiency, and elegance. The grammar has 16 rules. The spelling is phonetic. The nouns are genderless. Based. And the verbs are regular and uninflected. He tested and expanded it by translating the Bible, Shakespeare, Molière, and Goethe. Okay. Esperanto shares some features with Yiddish and Ladino, Jewish lingua francas that had once helped erase borders. Some studies identify Yiddish influence, though Zamenhof never mentioned one. Esperanto's vocabulary poses a problem for 21st century internationalists because it comes solely from European languages. Aficionados have invented other constructed languages, or conlangs. That's new to me, man. Like lingua de planeta, that include non-European words, but Esperanto continues to dominate the field. Okay? Other conlangs, like Edo, interlingue, and interlingua, have remained tiny but resilient, but only Esperanto has truly stood the test of time. Today, just under 1 million people know a little bit of the language, and 10 million have studied it. It is a stable but deterritorialized speech community. The League of Nations supported the idea of an auxiliary language. In 1954, UNESCO gave the Universala Esperanto Asocio, or UEA, consultative status. Various Protestant and Catholic denominations have tolerated the use of Esperanto as a liturgical language. The founder of the Baha'i Faith supported the idea of a conlang. Some of its followers favor Esperanto, some others prefer interlingua. Critics call Esperanto artificial and acultural. But the distinction between natural and artificial is hard to maintain in the case of languages. Pidgins are also artificial, arising at an identifiable time and place, but many evolve into creoles, indisputably natural languages. Okay. Many states standardize and legislate their official languages. Language reformers invented much of the phonology, morphology, grammar, and vocabulary of modern Chinese. And writers often shape and reshape their mother tongues, as a glance at Shakespeare's neologisms, foul-mouthed swagger, bedazzle demonstrates. If words adjudged possible can become actual words, possible languages can become actual languages. Okay. Further, Esperanto does not lack culture. Some 2,000 Denaskoloj, or native speakers, have been raised in it, thus creolizing it. More than 100 periodicals appear in it, and there are 30,000 Esperanto books and several full-length feature films. Zamenhof designed Esperanto as a second language to supplement, rather than supplant, ethnic languages. So, yeah, they didn't want to get rid of the ethnic languages, but just allow people to communicate with each other. Today, the UEA has more than 15,000 members in 121 countries, holds annual world congresses. Attendance has remained constant. Yada, yada, yada. However, individual membership is falling. We're taking a linguistics course today. We're talking language, yeah. We don't often do this here, so this is good. Okay. How about Esperanto and revolution? Given its internationalism and pacifism, Esperanto attracted anarchists, socialists, and communists. Fascist regimes recognized its revolutionary potential and suppressed it. Wow. Yeah, it's falling because it's a language for nerds. Oh, come on, dude. Give him a break, dude. In World War I, the UEA declared its neutrality. The pro-war press reviled Esperantists as national traitors. Wow. Some eventually compromised with nationalism. Never do that. 1921, Red and worker Esperantists funded the Sena Sieca Asocio Totmanda, or the SAT, the World National, the World A National Association. Whoa. I've never seen that word in my life. The World A National Association, dedicated to the international class struggle. Based, we should recognize this as the first red-green party, as green is Esperanto's color. The SAT admitted delegates from all left-wing parties and broke with the UEA, accusing it of capitulating to capitalism and betraying internationalism. Never do that. In its early years, the SAT was closely linked with the Soviet Esperanto Union. While some Soviet Esperantists wanted their organizations to welcome revolutionaries across the world, loyalty to Moscow became its hallmark. The SAT's idea of nationless appealed to many Soviet Esperantists, and the two groups collaborated. Eventually, however, the Soviets became critical of SAT communists for cooperating with other parties. In the late 1920s, SAT members outside Russia broke away to form the Internacio de Proletage Esperantoes, the International Proletarian Esperantists. That followed the Moscow Line. Marxist opposition to the idea of nationlessness and the SAT's increasingly anti-Soviet line contributed to the split. Anarchists, Esperantists, and others preached anationalism. Wow. They preached anationalism in Spain's Civil War. During World War II, the SAT faced intense repression in continental Europe and since 1945 devoted itself mainly to publishing. Though it wanted to integrate Esperanto into social movements, the SAT's greatest post-war achievement came with a magnificent monolingual Plena Illustrita Vortaro, or the Complete Illustrated Dictionary in 1970, set a new standard for the language. Esperanto will die when all of its speakers realize they're also really into Tolkien and just decide to speak Elvish instead. Oh, man. Dictators have tried to exterminate Esperanto. Ulrich Linz calls it the dangerous language. Of course, states try to stamp out many languages, such as those spoken by despised minorities or rebel groups. Esperanto is particularly vulnerable to these attacks because it's never commanded a social base and its speakers are widely scattered. Hitler makes his way into this article. Hitler saw Esperantists as enemies of the state, not only because of their pacifism and leftism, but also because of their Jewish founder. In Mein Kampf, he condemned Esperanto as a secret language, portraying it as a Jewish weapon. It's the opposite of secret. Wow. 2 years after Hitler seized power, the journal Der Deutsche Esperantist stopped appearing. Martin Bormann attacked Esperanto as Mischsprache, a mongrel language. Yikes. Heinrich Himmler disbanded its clubs. Reinhard Heydrich began annihilating it. A pro-Nazi Esperanto organization briefly appeared, but the Nazis eventually suppressed that as well. Wow. Serious question, though, is the fantasy of a shared world language, constructed or otherwise, more internationalist, or is it more globalist? I don't know. What is the difference? Internationalism, you mean revolutionary internationalism versus just globalism, which is Globalism is just what? Global international trade. What do we mean by these things? Yeah. Internationalism implies worldwide cooperation. Globalism means networking the world for some other purpose. Business or hegemony. Okay. Or other nefarious. Okay. Makes sense. I don't know. Suppose it could be both. I don't know. I just really don't know. Good question. Um, what are you trying to say? You don't like Esperanto? What do and you just like Hitler? Is that what you're saying, Nasai? All right, I'm fucking with you. A few Esperantists joined the resistance. Others continued to meet secretly. Many died in concentration camps. Where some continued to teach the language, others committed suicide. When Hitler's troops marched east, they shot Zamenhof's son. His daughters died in the camps. Other fascist leaders followed Hitler's suit. Portugal, Spain banned Esperanto as a threat to language purity. In Italy, it survived till 1941, when Radio Rome ended its Esperanto broadcasts. Oh, for sure. I don't think you're saying it is either. It's just I don't see what it actually does to help the world cooperate. It's a good question. I'm not sure I necessarily see it. You think language barriers are the main source? I don't think they are. That's what I'm getting at, too. That's why I'm like, from the get-go, right? From the get-go, I'm like, this doesn't seem to have the analysis. He goes, right? He goes, the biggest problem is that we couldn't talk to each other. That's not it. Not it. If international brigadiers had known Esperanto, they might have had more success. I don't know. I just don't see it. It's possible. I don't know. Where were we? Yeah. Soviet Union violently suppressed Esperanto after years of tolerance and even encouragement. Most Soviet Esperantists welcomed the 1917 revolution, rebranded their language as a language of international proletariat. Some Esperantists allied with a movement for a proletarian culture, or a prolecult, arguing that a new culture demanded a new language. For a brief moment, it looked like Esperanto would be taught in schools and factories. The long-awaited breakthrough seemed imminent, but in 1921, the Communist International set up a commission to investigate an international auxiliary language, and it came out against Esperanto in favor of Ido, or Ido. I don't know how to say it. I don't know how to say it. I do not know. Despite this, Esperanto continued to grow. The Soviet Union broadcast in the language and issued propagandistic postage stamps for it. But the language didn't fit in the... I don't know. It didn't fit into the transition from internationalism to socialism in one country. The SEUs closed down in 37-38, the Great Terror. Some of its members were imprisoned or executed because of the paranoid idea that the organization had become vulnerable to manipulation by foreign spies, Zionists, and Trotskyists. Who taught you such a bad word? After World War III, Esperantists in Eastern Europe faced similar repression. In the 50s, survivors in Soviet bloc countries denounced the Esperanto ban. After Stalin's death, a controlled revival followed, and Esperantists skillfully utilized Moscow's growing peace movement. They restored links to the UEA, and state subsidies began trickling in. Today, Esperanto has a bigger following in Russia and Eastern Europe than in most other places. Chinese anarchists embraced Esperanto as an auxiliary language in response to a broader campaign by other activists to make literary Chinese easier to understand. Some Chinese Esperantists in Tokyo and Paris believed such a move would open China to the world while preserving its cultural essence. Others, more extreme, proposed abolishing the Chinese language altogether and replacing it with Esperanto. Yikes. Capitalism has no problem globalizing in spite of language barriers. Language barriers are getting smaller because of, live translation, Google and shit. You hate to say it. You hate to give it up to Google. While the Esperanto craze among Chinese overseas died down, supporters at home won over leading intellectuals, including Lu Xun. Is that how you say that? For them, Esperanto would build internationalism and bring enlightenment to citizens kept illiterate by the complexity of Chinese writing. Esperantists also participated in the movement that campaigned to Latinize written Chinese. You were literally just using Google Translate to talk to the cleaning person my boss hired. Look at that. Look at that. Look at that. Communists in China also learned Esperanto and used it after the Japanese invasion to seek out foreign support for the resistance. The Japanese female Esperantist Hasegawa Teru, also known as Verda Meijo or Green May, went to China and joined the Clara Circle, named to honor both Zamenhof's wife Clara and Marxist theorist Clara Zetkin. Hasegawa tried to interest Chinese women in proletarian Esperantist writing and urged her comrades in Japan to call for a world boycott of their country. The new communist government in Beijing rewarded Esperantists for their role in language reform by letting them teach their language in state schools. As in the Soviet Union, the government support didn't last long. In the early 50s, Esperantists were suppressed. They were later allowed back, suffered again in the Cultural Revolution like many Chinese with foreign contacts. In general, however, Cultural Revolution promoted Esperanto, radio broadcasts in the language increased, and the monthly magazine El Popolo Chinio, or People's China, and other Esperantist literature flourished. Courses were held to teach the language and train cadres to work in the radio station and publishing. At one point, Beijing's Esperanto Association counted up to 400,000 speakers. Even today, students can study Esperanto in some universities. After China's opening to the world in the 80s, however, numbers fell as other languages became available. Nevertheless, Chinese radio stations continued to broadcast in Esperanto. Okay, how much is left here? Does Esperantism have a future, or is it too quixotic and utopian to survive? The decline of the labor movement in the West and the collapse of communism in the East removed its traditional supports. It is best hoped to survive as, in the words of linguist Ron Perlin, as a cheerful diaspora that lives on at characterful classes and congresses where diehards for the interna ideo mingle with fearsome polyglots and hardcore language nerds. Like we were saying. It peaked in the early 20th century when global French was declining and English had not yet become truly global. Now, English is the world's primary language, facing rising juggernauts like Chinese, Spanish, and Arabic. If English is knocked from its ascendancy, it might be by a babel of competing meta-languages, allowing smaller languages, including Esperanto, to survive in the interstices? How do you say this word?
Interstices.
Interstices. What? Weird. Speaking of language. Yeah. Well, I guess it's written for language nerds, you know? Jeez, I'm barely hanging on. What is interstices? What does that word mean? An intervening space, especially a small space. In the spaces, you could figure out by the context. All right. Fucking shit, man. I'm exhausted. Some linguists see the internet as a potential savior for languages endangered by these global killers. Others believe these languages need real-world analogs to survive. For Esperantists, a digital revival would align with the language's history. Esperanto evolved not through physical collective, but in non-territorial communities linked by letters, phone calls, and occasional meetings. Today, the internet is connecting new Esperantists through forums, social media, WhatsApp groups, and online dictionaries. The community attracts young people at home in the digital world In the transnational and wired world, Esperanto is bouncing back. Younger speakers are abandoning the language's narrow, inward-looking model and updating how it is learned and used. With their youthful creativity, they're reaching out. E@I, a loosely organized youth collective, uses technology to provide free, instant access to Esperanto. Where you once had to go out of their way to meet other speakers, now they're just a mouse click away. We got Dr. Buenabuen in the house. How you doing, Dr. Buenabuen? Everyone follow Dr. Buenabuen. You're going to love that content. Very thoughtful human being. Several hundred blogs. We're learning about Esperanto, Dr. Buenabuen. Several hundred blogs promote Esperantist books, games, music, and humor. The language's Wikipedia exceeds 215,000 pages. More than 100,000 learners use Learnu, the free multi-language Esperanto website, and then 750 use Duolingo. You can learn Esperanto on Duolingo. Hey, look at that. How are you today? I'm doing well. It's a beautiful day in the neighborhood. Dr. Buenabuen, how are you today? How are you today? Yeah, today more people are learning Esperanto than ever before. That's sort of cool. You knew someone who spoke it a long time ago? The second Esperanto wave does not compete with the first. The traditional wing embraces the virtual wing, and digital Esperantists rely on the manuals, dictionaries, and literature created in the analog age. In the past, supporters promoted Esperanto's logicality and predictability. There's another weird word. These attributes suit the computer age. Zamenhof thought Esperanto could remove the walls between ethnicities and accustom people to seeing their neighbors as brothers and sisters. I think class consciousness will do a much better job. If you have class consciousness, it's almost like you see, it's almost like at that point the language is just like, it's just sort of slowing you down, if anything, but like you're on the same page if you got the class consciousness. These values, humanitarianism, internationalism, socialism, are needed more than ever today. He likened a language in a metaphor recalled by Esther Shore in her Bridge of Words to a plank lying on a riverbank that at some future point people might use to build a bridge. While no bridge is currently on the horizon, there seems to be no end to Zamenhof's sacred dream of one. Yeah, we're reading a Jacobin article. We read a Jacobin article sort of implying Esperanto has got revolutionary potential. I don't see it. I didn't see it. But I enjoyed reading it and learning about Esperanto and its history. And I hope you did too. As I end this YouTube clip, stick around, live audience. As I end this YouTube clip, I want to remind you, please like and subscribe, hit the bell, support the stream. Lots of different ways you can support the stream. If you're watching on the YouTube, one of the best ways to do that is to support on Patreon, patreon.com/iDanSimpson. Love your face.